Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, more from aircraft maintenance, great balls of fire. What are these divots in your tablet screen? In which our hero saves his boss's bacon because the backup system worked. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. More from aircraft maintenance, great balls of fire. The events detailed here occur 3 years prior to the events in Afghanistan, while I was in AIT, Advanced Individual Training, in Fort Eustis, VA. I might have taken some liberties with the actual conversations, as these events were almost 15 years ago. AIT for engine guys in the Army is rather different. Like all other aviation jobs, basically, during AIT there is a time of increasing freedom and less restrictions on where we can go and what we can do. Every day, you get up, go to PT, hit the showers, form up, march to the chow hall, form up again, march to the school, fall into class, form up for lunch by platoon, march to the chow hall, form up by platoon, march to the school. You get the idea. Every day, day in, day out. Unless you were engines in your third month, just after T-53, UH-1, Huey, hands-on. For us, it was a magical time where our squad, after breakfast, was released to march ourselves back into the woods, up a hill to a wonderful place called the Run Cell. Lunchtime, we either went down the hill or availed ourselves to the well-stocked fridge fund and hung out with the instructors, and then after class we meandered our way down, again just our own squad, back to the barracks. We got to pretend for a little while that we were in the real army, and not stuck in a training environment. Here, we didn't have to dabble in theory, or perform the same dumb task repeatedly. Here at the Run Cell, they taught us troubleshooting. The Run Cell was a building with 4 actual, live, T-53 series engines, and all the necessary equipment to safely run them and test them. Our squad was divided up into 3 teams. The 4th cell was actually broken at the time, and we were then given problems by the instructors to solve. The instructors would do this by actually inducing problems into the engine we'd have to track down and fix using our manuals, troubleshooting trees and logic. This was as real world as we could get in training, with the consequence that we could, if left to our own devices, actually wreck these engines. It was an amazing first week, and that first Friday morning found us looking forward to an amazing weekend, as we all had weekend passes available. Of course, the only hurdle we had was school that day, which being at Run Cell meant it would be yet another awesome day. My team settled down into our control room with our instructor and waited for the day's troubleshooting challenge. Instructor: okay, Z-Wolf, why don't you run the engine today? This would be my first time, so I aimed not to screw anything up. I started the engine without incident, making sure all gauges were reading correctly, poised and ready in case something strange had happened, like a runaway start. Instructor: take it up to 90% power please. Nodding in affirmative, I advanced the throttle, keeping an eye on my gauges when boom boom lam blam blam blam. The EGT, exhaust gas temperature, gauge started dancing like it was being punched by furious hellspawn, and actual, honest-to-goodness fireballs were shooting out the back end of the engine. I frantically yanked the throttle back down to idle and stared at the instructor, likely pale as can be. Z-Wolf, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. Classmates, what did you do? Instructor: LOL. Instructor: bring it up to 90% and hold it this time. Z-Wolf: but what about the... Instructor: just do it, private. I advanced the throttle again, bracing myself, this time watching the engine as it grew and raged, sharding out fireballs while barking curses upon me and all of humanity. He made me hold it there for a minute before signaling to go ahead and shut it down. Instructor: your assignment today, figure it out and have it fixed before the end of the day. With that, he exited the control room and left us to our own devices. This being TFTS, and we being support in training, you can already tell we didn't track down the fire demon defecating in our engine without a hitch or two. You see, this was what one could consider a group project, and my team had 3 other individuals on it: Joey, who was basically a shorter, younger version of the guy from Friends. Shaver, Joey's muscle and sidekick, looked like Shaggy and sounded like him too, and Axeman, may he rest in peace, who had a bit of a thing for Axe body spray and substitute for showers, ever since basic training. I, being the resident nerd, dove into the manual and started reviewing the troubleshooting tree information for the symptoms we were seeing. Not finding fire crapping imp right off, I knew it would take a few minutes to figure out what was actually up. Joey, however, was having none of that. His logic tree was much, much shorter. Joey, there's fire shooting out the back end. What makes fire? Fuel. Fuel makes fire. It must be fuel. Where could it come from? Well, it's coming out the back. Hey. The fuel drains out the back. Wait, how does it get there? Oh. Flow divider and dump valve. Joey, hey, Shaver, check it out. It's the flow divider and dump valve. It's gotta be draining into the exhaust and boom. Fireball. Shaver, yeah, that's gotta be it. Let's fix it. Axeman, makes sense to me. Z-Wolf, guys, that's not how this works. You're not going to get fireballs if a little bit of fuel drains out the back. Joey, do you even know how an afterburner works? This is totally like that. Shaver, yeah, my dad's a pilot, it totally works that way. Joey, it must be stuck or something. We'll just open it up and adjust it. Come on, let's go. I refused. Z-Wolf, no, this isn't right. That's not the problem. Joey, fine, you stay in here. We'll actually do some work. I watched the three of them leave and enter the engine cell with a toolbox and sat back down with the manual. Within a couple minutes, I'd realized the issue was actually the fuel control being maladjusted. If the fuel control isn't adjusted correctly, it means it won't open the guide vanes into the compressor properly. If those don't open to the degree they should based off the throttle settings, it creates a low pressure situation at the front of the compressor, causing the compressor to literally stall out, and fireballs to shoot out the back of the engine. Now, I just had to determine if it was okay to make the adjustments, per the maintenance allocation chart in the back of the manual. According to our instructions, we were to operate to AVIM level. An aside, aviation maintenance in the Army is split into three categories: AVUM, AVIM, and Depot. AVIM is unit level and is very basic tasks, not going too deep into the component. AVIM is intermediate level, and with some engines you could go so far as to a module-by-module teardown and rebuild. It gets pretty deep. Think of it much like Simba's father telling him the extent of his kingdom. And then there is Depot, the dark place the maintainer must never go. I checked the chart and saw the adjustment was considered AVUM level, which meant it would be a piece of cake. On a whim, I decided to check on the adjustment of the flow divider/dump valve. Angry black letters glared at me, and I felt everything pucker up. Depot. Oh hell, the idiots were already working without a manual as it was, and in aviation that sin is bad enough. But doing depot level maintenance? If I didn't stop them, we were all screwed. Rise as a team, fail as a team, and all that jazz. I jumped out of my chair and made for the door, which was now occupied by an instructor who was watching me with crossed arms. Instructor, and why aren't you helping the rest of your team right now? Z-Wolf, because those guys are wrong, it's a compressor stall, not the fuel divider, and I need to get in there and stop them. Instructor, pointing towards the chair, sit. You're not going in there. Walk me through it. Z-Wolf, but Depot. Instructor, sit. I sat, and I watched as they tore into the divider and explained what I'd found and how. The instructor nodded and told me to take a break and relax and enjoy the show at lunchtime. 1 hour later. Joey and Posse filtered back into the control room, impressed with themselves. The instructor met their cheer with a dead glare, while I stayed seated in the back of the room. Joey, hey yo, it's fixed. Let's run it. Instructor, do you have any idea of just how monumentally you all screwed up? Their smiles died. Instructor, did you even bother checking the Mac and the manual before you decided to tear into a depot-level part? In fact, where was your manual in the first place? Do you realize now to get this engine serviceable again, we're going to be stuck here all weekend replacing it and sending it back to depot for repair because you couldn't look at the manual? And by we I do mean you three. I'm going to have your drill sergeants pull your weekend passes, and you're going to be here all weekend fixing your screw-ups. The weekend pass. Gonna. They'd be stuck in the barracks all weekend, doing who knows what details once the engine was fixed. It was the worst thing that could have happened. Instructor, go to lunch, get back here and put that back together, and then talk to Z-Wolf because he actually knows what's wrong with it. Lunch, a now somber event, came and went. The valve was restored to its original condition, and we made the fuel control adjustments, a couple turns of a screw followed by some safety wire to secure it in place. I ran the engine again, and this time it purred like a newly exorcised kitten. Instructor, good work. By the way, I was kidding about the passes. We don't need to replace the engine, we're authorized to fix it here. But read your damn manuals next time. What are these divots in your tablet screen? I don't even want to think about how long ago this story took place, suffice to say it was many, many moons ago. While I was in college I interned during the summer because at that time interns got paid better than burger flippers, and I was in the help desk portion of a very large company. Was still a very nervous little intern, it was the first job I ever had to wear a tie for and wanted to make a good impression, etc. Suffice to say I was a lot less nervous and a lot more jaded by the end of this internship, but my most memorable experience was probably my second or third day and being sent by my supervisor to visit the office of one of the C-suite. I want to say CFO, but I don't remember. Guy called in because his tablet's screen was black and reported that the power light would go off and on when he hit the power button, but display simply refused to turn on. I got lost 3 times trying to even find the man's office, and when I finally do get there his secretary or admin, or whatever she's called these days buzzes him. Dirtbag made me cool my heels for 10 minutes. Finally get into this man's office, and am trying very hard to keep it together. One of my first support cases and this man makes my salary and the time it takes for him to take a dump. Start examining the unit while he plays hunt and peck with his desktop. Nothing really pops out about the tablet. I flip it over and look at the back, nothing doing there either. As I flip the thing back over the light catches it just so, and I notice all these weird divots and grooves in the screen. I walk over to the window and try to catch the light better, so I can look closer, and the C-suite guy asks what I'm doing. I explain I noticed all these lines and such on the screen, and they're not supposed to be there. Guy says something to the effect of, "Oh, my pen leaves those." Bear in mind this is really old tech compared to this day and age. The tablet itself was probably 2 inches thick and heavy as hell. The stylus they came with had a nice fat tip that shouldn't dimple or groove the screen in the slightest. I look where the stylus is usually stored and notice that it's empty. I ask him where the stylus is and he says the one that came with the tablet S**KED, and he threw it out and was using a better one. I ask him where the better one is and he pulls what looks like a big pen from his suit front pocket. There are no words to express how I felt at that moment. Equal parts horror and disgust. Horror because I don't know how to tell this guy that he's an idiot, disgust because those tablets were not cheap. I'm pretty sure my mouth opens and closes a few times with no sound coming out before I finally land on a safe question. What did you do about all the ink on the screen? He opens one of his desk drawers and out comes a bottle of Windex and some paper towels. At this point my inner monologue is shouting danger Will Robinson, danger. I stammer something about running diagnostics and scurry back to IT. My supervisor sees me come back and smirks. How's his pen working for him? He's already got a replacement tablet ready to go. He just unscrews the hard drive cover from the unit with a dead screen and pops it in a replacement. It was a mandatory step to remove the stylus from the new tablet, so he didn't realize we just kept replacing them. I guess he thought the IT elves just fixed it for us? in which our hero saves his boss's bacon because the backup system worked. The situation. The company I work for does development, support and hosting of desktop DB systems. In the few months leading up to this incident, we had recently migrated our hosting operations from leased hardware in a data center to Tropical River Spider operations. I'm sure you can figure it out. Let's call them TRSO for short, virtual machines. The learning curve was steep, but some good training, including a thorough walk through the glossary, meant that things were humming smoothly along. We had about 12 hosting VMs for our various customers, some shared, some single customer. Now the desktop DB server product allows scheduled backups of active databases, and we had set up scheduled copies to off-machine storage buckets in TRSO's $storage service. These were working well, and I had a daily routine for checking that the backups were getting to the right places. The incident. One Monday morning at about 9:15, just as the first cup of tea of the morning was taking effect, I got a panicked call from my boss. He said, "I think I've deleted a server by mistake. Can you check $server X ASAP?" So I logged into the TRSO console for that customer account, and sure enough, $server X was gone. No trace to be found. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Further discussion revealed that he had temporarily forgotten what terminate meant, and that his actual intention was to shut down a test machine in another customer account. Crap. While he got in touch with $client to stall them with a story about a server crash, I got to work. Those 12 or so hosting VMs I mentioned earlier. They had all been created by little old me, so I had the process pretty down pat. It was all still fresh in my head, and I had all of the software installers and other stuff handily available. I checked the time and got cracking. Create, configure, and secure new VM, check. At this point, our hero takes a deep breath and copies the latest overnight backup back from $storage service. Activate latest backup as live, check time, and call my boss. 55 minutes. 55 minutes from first call from my boss to fully active, from scratch, Windows Server running desktop DB server. There was a further 20 minutes or so of final configuration, trivial stuff like scheduling the nightly backups to storage service, but basically all done. The fallout. Surprisingly little in the end. The client was relieved that his team only lost an hour or so's work from that morning, so small beer from their end. And my boss had burned into his brain that terminate is something that should be done with extreme caution, and definitely not before the first coffee of the morning has properly kicked in.